Your kind must die, she said, then held my hand instead. Capture in the ruins. The purple glow of Alara Kith's bioscanner illuminated the crumbling archway as she tracked her prey through the ruins of Tertius. Ancient dust swirled around her footsteps, disturbed for the first time in decades. Her violet skin absorbed the ambient radiation, converting it to enhanced sensory perception, a trait that made the Nayari such effective hunters. Movement detected. Commander, whispered her second-in-command through the neural link. Sector 7, definitely human. Alara's lips tightened. Humans were forbidden in this quadrant, especially near the sacred ruins. Their presence was an affront to everything she had been taught. That humans had released the Vaxus pathogen that nearly destroyed her people 3 centuries ago. I'll handle this alone, she responded, signaling her squad to maintain perimeter positions. She moved silently through the fallen columns, following the faint heat signature. The human wasn't running, curious. Most scattered like terrified prey when Nayari enforcement units approached. This one was methodically collecting samples from the luminescent flora that had overtaken the ruins. Alara raised her pulse weapon. Don't move, human. You're trespassing on protected Nayari territory. The man turned slowly, remarkably composed. His eyes, a deep brown that reminded her strangely of the rare sunsets on her homeworld, showed no fear, only mild surprise. I thought the Tertius ruins were designated as neutral scientific study zones under the Proxima Accord, he said, carefully setting down a collection vial. The Proxima Accord was dissolved after your kind violated containment protocols. Alara replied automatically, though something in her voice wavered. Why did his face seem vaguely familiar? My name is Darian Rove, he offered, as if they were meeting at some diplomatic function rather than a desolate ruin with her weapon trained on his chest. I'm a xenobotanical engineer studying regenerative properties of post-war flora. Saving plants won't save you from execution, human. Darian smiled sadly. I'm not trying to save myself. I'm trying to save worlds, including yours, Commander. The presumption infuriated her. The Nayari don't need saving by humans. The spreading desertification on your southern continent suggests otherwise, he countered. The same genetic degradation affecting Earth's biosphere is beginning on your homeworld. These plants contain the adaptive sequences that could reverse it. Alara stepped closer, pulse weapon still raised. How do you know about... Information flows even across enemy lines, Darian said. Science doesn't recognize your war. Something about his calm certainty disturbed her. Alara reached for his arm to secure him for transport. But the moment her fingers touched his skin, a blinding flash of memory exploded through her mind. Standing together on a cliffside she'd never visited, watching twin moons rise over an unfamiliar ocean. She staggered back, disoriented, and saw the same shock reflected in his eyes. What was that? He whispered. A trick, she hissed, though she knew it wasn't. Her people were mildly telepathic, but she'd never experienced anything like this, especially not with a human. Your kind must die, she said mechanically, the words of her training. Yet her finger refused to activate the weapon. Instead, her hand moved of its own accord, reaching toward him again. Darian hesitated, then slowly extended his hand to meet hers. We've met before, he said softly. Haven't we? Forbidden connection. Alara paced the perimeter of her quarters aboard the Nayari enforcement vessel Shadowed Claw. 26 cycles since capturing the human, and still the vision haunted her, standing beside him on that unknown shore, feeling a sense of belonging she'd never experienced in her life. The memory couldn't be hers. She'd never been to any such place. Commander, the prisoner transfer is scheduled in 3 hours, her second-in-command reported through the door panel. High Command wants him brought directly to Central Intelligence rather than processed for standard elimination. Acknowledged, Alara replied, keeping her voice neutral despite the surge of relief. A reprieve, however brief. After her subordinate departed, Alara pressed her palm against the cool surface of her meditation stone, struggling to center herself. The stone remained inert, her thoughts too chaotic for proper communion. She'd never questioned her duty before. Humans were the enemy, responsible for the devastation of her world. Yet something about Darian Rove had breached defenses she never knew she had. Later, she stood outside his containment cell, watching through the one-way barrier as he sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed in apparent meditation. Though restrained, He maintained that strange serenity she'd first noted in the ruins. "You requested to speak with the prisoner before transfer?" the security officer asked. "Yes, alone. I need to verify something about his research." When the door sealed behind her, Darian opened his eyes. "Commander Kith, I was hoping you'd come. How do you know my name?" "I never gave it to you." He tilted his head slightly. "The same way I know you've been having dreams about a cliffside with twin moons. The same way you know I have a birthmark shaped like the Cressida constellation on my shoulder." Ilara felt cold shock ripple through her. The birthmark. She'd seen it in another flash when their hands met, but he'd been fully clothed. There was no way she could have known. "What's happening to us?" she demanded. "I think you already suspect," Darian said softly. "The official histories of both our peoples have gaps, convenient omissions. I've spent my life studying those gaps." Ilara moved closer, lowering her voice. "When Central Intelligence extracts information, nothing remains of the subject. If you know something, tell me now." Darian's eyes held hers. "Show me your left wrist." Hesitantly, she pushed up her sleeve, revealing a small, star-shaped birthmark she'd had since childhood. "Identical to mine," he whispered, turning his own wrist to show the matching mark. "We carry the same genetic signature, a deliberate encoding left by our ancestors. We're living records, Ilara. Our DNA contains memories they didn't want erased." "Impossible. Humans and Nyari can't what? Share DNA? Breed? That's what they want everyone to believe." He leaned forward. "Touch my hand again. See what else we remember." Against every protocol, against everything she'd been taught, Ilara reached forward. Their fingers intertwined and the world dissolved. They stood in a laboratory. A human woman and a Nyari man worked side by side, their expressions urgent but hopeful. On a display behind them, molecular structures showing the Vaxxus pathogen being neutralized by a compound derived from both species' genetic material. "They found a cure," Ilara whispered as the vision faded. "Together." "And someone made sure it was forgotten," Darian added. "Our ancestors encoded their discovery into their children's DNA, into us. The memory transfer activates when descendants meet." The ship's announcement system chimed. "Approaching Central Command. Prepare prisoner for transfer." Ilara's hand tightened around Darian's. "If what you're saying is true, they'll kill us both. Not if we find proof first. There's a research outpost on Tertius where they work together. The records might still exist." Ilara made her decision in that moment, though it meant betraying everything she'd sworn to uphold. "Your kind should die," she said loudly for the benefit of any surveillance, then leaned in to whisper, "Meet me at the escape pods during third rotation." Escape from the Citadel. The Nyari Citadel loomed over Central Command like a talon reaching for the stars, a structure designed to intimidate as much as house the military elite. Ilara moved through its shadows with practiced efficiency, her uniform and rank granting her access to areas few could enter. In her quarters, she quickly gathered essential supplies, ration packs, medkits, and her personal data crystal containing her service records. She hesitated over her ceremonial dagger, a gift from her mentor when she earned her commander's rank. Taking it meant acknowledging she might never return. Leaving it meant abandoning the last piece of her former life. She slipped it into her boot. The prisoner transfer had gone according to protocol. Darian was now in a holding cell 3 levels below, awaiting interrogation from Central Intelligence operatives who would extract every fragment of knowledge from his mind, leaving nothing but an empty shell, unless she reached him first. Ilara overrode the security systems using her commander's clearance, creating a false maintenance alert that would clear the corridors near the detention level. As she approached the cell block, she encountered the guard on duty, Tavis, a young officer she'd personally trained. "Commander Kith," he said, surprised. "I wasn't informed you'd be conducting a pre-interrogation." "Direct order from Submarshal Vren," she lied smoothly. "The human has information about botanical weapons. I'm to assess the threat level before the extractors begin." Tavis nodded, though his eyes showed uncertainty. "Of course, Commander. Would you like me to accompany you?" "That won't be necessary." Seeing his hesitation, she added, "Your vigilance is commendable, Officer Tavis. Perhaps you'll serve under my command again someday." The subtle farewell wasn't lost on him. His eyes widened slightly, but his training held. With a formal salute, he stepped aside, Inside the cell, Darian looked up from the stark metal bench where he sat. Right on time. We have 7 minutes before the system detects the false credentials, Ilara said, deactivating his restraints. Can you run? Just try to keep up, he replied with unexpected confidence. They moved through the backways of the Citadel, using service tunnels Ilara had memorized years ago during her tactical training. Twice they nearly encountered patrols, forcing them to press into alcoves, bodies close enough that Ilara could feel Darian's heartbeat. Each time they touched, flickers of shared memory washed over them, growing stronger, more coherent. The hangar level is ahead, Ilara whispered as they reached a maintenance elevator. The scout ships have enough range to reach Tertius. They'll track any vessel launched from here, Darian pointed out. Ilara allowed herself a small smile. Not if it's officially on a mission. She produced a data chip, authorized reconnaissance flight to Sector 9, signed by Commander Ilara Kith. As they reached the hangar, alarm klaxons suddenly blared throughout the Citadel. They've discovered you're missing, Ilara said, quickening her pace. We have to move. The scout ship loomed before them, sleek, black, and built for speed. As Ilara initiated the launch sequence, the hangar doors began to close. Hold on, she warned, engaging thrusters before the pre-flight checks completed. The ship lurched forward, scraping against the partially closed doors as they shot into space. Pursuit would be immediate. Ilara programmed a series of random jumps to confuse their trail before setting course for Tertius. In the confined space of the cockpit, their proximity intensified the memory transfer. Images flowed between them, a secret research facility, scientists from both species working together, celebrations when the cure was discovered, then chaos as armed forces stormed the labs. They didn't want peace, Darian said softly, watching the stars streak by. Someone on both sides wanted the war to continue. Ilara nodded grimly, and they were willing to let both our species suffer to maintain power. As the ship accelerated to jump velocity, Darian's hand found hers across the console. This time, the vision that came was not from the past but a possibility. The two of them standing together before representatives of both worlds, revealing the truth that had been hidden for generations. We might die trying, she whispered. Darian's fingers tightened around hers. Or we might save everyone. The scout ship vanished into hyperspace, carrying with it the fragile hope for two civilizations bound by hatred and the two people determined to break those bonds, one shared memory at a time. Sanctuary among stars. The abandoned mining colony of Helios Drift floated in the shadow of a gas giant, its collection of interconnected habitats and repurposed freighters, forming a patchwork community far from official oversight. Here, in this lawless sanctuary between worlds, species mixed freely, a reality both governments preferred to pretend didn't exist. Ilara guided their damaged scout ship through a narrow docking tunnel, the vessel's hull groaning from the strain of their hasty escape and subsequent firefight with a Nyari patrol. You're certain your contact will help us? She asked, powering down the failing engines. Darian nodded. Professor Lin has been documenting cross-species cooperation for decades. If anyone can help interpret our shared memories and find proof, it's her. They moved cautiously through the crowded market decks, where the air hung heavy with the mingled scents of exotic foods, mechanical lubricants, and too many bodies in too small a space. Ilara kept her hood low, conscious of her distinctive purple skin. Though mixed communities existed, Nyari deserters were rare and valuable bounty. There, Darian whispered, pointing toward a small storefront with a sign reading, Xenoanthropological Curiosities. Behind the weathered counter stood an elderly human woman with silver hair and knowing eyes. Professor? Darian greeted her with obvious respect. The woman's gaze shifted to Ilara, narrowing slightly. When you said you were bringing someone special, you understated matters considerably. She gestured toward a curtained doorway. Quickly, before someone recognizes a Nyari enforcement commander. The back room was a chaotic archive, shelves overflowing with artifacts, data crystals, and ancient books from a dozen worlds. Professor Lin sealed the door behind them and activated a signal jammer. Show me, she said without preamble. Ilara and Darian exchanged glances, then clasped hands. By now the contact came naturally, the shared visions flowing between them like water. Remarkable, Lin whispered, watching their expressions change in unison. The limbic synchronization is perfect. When they separated, the professor was already pulling volumes from her shelves. "The Concord Project," she said, setting a dusty data terminal on the table. Officially, it never existed. Unofficially, it was the closest our peoples ever came to peace. The terminal hummed to life, displaying faded images of a research facility on Tertius, the same one from their shared visions. 30 researchers, 15 from each species, worked to find a cure for the Vaxus pathogen, Lynn explained. They succeeded, but more importantly, they discovered something unprecedented. Nyari and human DNA could be spliced to create a hybrid immunity that would protect both species permanently. "That's impossible," Alara objected. "Our biologies are too different." "Are they?" Lynn challenged. "Or is that what both governments want everyone to believe?" She activated a genetic comparison display. "The official genetic records have been altered. Your peoples are far more compatible than either side admits, likely sharing common ancestors millennia ago." Darian leaned forward. "The birthmarks, engineered genetic markers," Lynn confirmed. "When the project was discovered and shut down, the researchers knew their work would be destroyed. They encoded the cure formula into their own DNA, designed to be triggered when descendants from both sides made contact." "We're living backup copies," Ilara said softly. "Precisely." Lynn's expression grew grave. The researchers were executed, their children separated and raised without knowledge of their origins. The birthmarks were an unexpected side effect of the genetic modification, impossible to remove without destroying the encoded data. "How many others like us are there?" Darian asked. "Unknown. The records were purged. You two are the first paired descendants I've encountered." A loud bang against the outer door interrupted them. Lynn moved quickly to a surveillance monitor. "Nyari enforcers," she said grimly. "They've tracked you." "We need to leave," Alara said, reaching for her weapon. Lynn shook her head. "Too late for that." She pressed a concealed panel in the wall, revealing a hidden chamber. "Take this," she said, handing Darian an ancient data crystal. "Complete genome sequencing of the original researchers and the cure formula. Find the others like you. Together you can force both governments to acknowledge the truth." "Come with us," Darian urged. "Someone needs to slow them down." Lynn smiled sadly. "My life's work has been waiting for this moment. Now go. There's a maintenance passage that leads to the lower docks." As they slipped into the hidden passage, Ilara hesitated. "Professor, thank you," Lynn nodded once. "End this war. It's gone on far too long." The passage led them through the colony's underbelly, where they secured passage on a smuggler's vessel bound for the outer territories. As the ship broke orbit, they watched Helios drift recede into the darkness, hoping Professor Lynn had escaped, knowing she likely hadn't. That night, in the cramped privacy of their shared cabin, Ilara and Darian studied the data crystal. Within its storage lay the complete truth, genetic proof that humans and Nyari were not natural enemies but biological cousins who shared. Immunity could save both species. "We need to find a way to broadcast this to both worlds," Darian said. Ilara's fingers traced the star-shaped birthmark on her wrist. "No, we need to show them." She met his eyes. "Everyone needs to see what happens when we come together." Under the dim cabin lights, their hands found each other once more. This time the memories flowed both ways, past and future intertwining, showing them not just what had been hidden, but what might yet be. Reunion and revelation. The grand assembly of the Nyari hierarchy convened in the ancient amphitheater carved into the sacred cliffs of their homeworld. 300 purple-skinned leaders arranged in concentric circles according to rank and lineage, their collective telepathic murmur creating a background hum of anticipation and unease. At the center, surrounded by armed guards, stood Ilara and Darian, the deserter and the human, brought back in chains after their capture near the outer colonies. Behind them loomed High Marshal Krex, his ceremonial armor gleaming in the amber light of the setting sun. "Members of the hierarchy," Krex's voice resonated through the chamber, "we gather to witness justice for an unprecedented betrayal. Commander Ilara Kith, decorated enforcer and daughter of the 7th lineage, has committed treason of the highest order, not merely aiding a human, but claiming kinship with our ancient enemy." Murmurs of disgust rippled through the assembly. Before sentencing, Krex continued, "The accused may speak their final words. Ilara stood tall, her gaze sweeping across the leaders of her people. Many had been her mentors, some even friends. All now looked at her with cold disdain. "I was born to serve the Nyari," she began. "I believed, as you all do, that humans brought the Vaxis pathogen that devastated our world. I believed they were our natural enemy." She glanced at Darian beside her. "I was wrong. We all were. Blasphemy," someone shouted from the upper tiers. Ilara continued, undeterred. "For 3 centuries we've fought a war based on a lie. The Vaxis pathogen was not a human weapon. It was a natural mutation that threatened both our species. And together we found a cure." She nodded to Darian, who stepped forward despite his restraints. "Your ancestors and mine worked together on Tertius," he said. "When they discovered the cure required genetic compatibility between our species, powerful interests on both sides moved to bury the truth. They destroyed the research, killed the scientists, and rewrote history." "Convenient claims without evidence," Krex sneered. "We are the evidence," Ilara replied. "The researchers encoded their discoveries into their descendants' DNA, a living backup that would activate when the right descendants found each other." She turned to face Krex directly. "You've examined our genetic profiles since our capture. You know what you found." A flicker of unease crossed the High Marshal's face. From the second tier, an elder scientist rose. "High Marshal, is this true? What did the genetic analysis reveal?" Before Krex could respond, the massive doors of the amphitheater burst open. A contingent of humans entered, led by a dignified woman with commander's insignia. The human diplomatic delegation that had arrived under truce flag days earlier. "Forgive our interruption," the human commander announced, "but we bring additional witnesses relevant to these proceedings." Behind her came Professor Lin, alive, though bearing the marks of rough treatment, and with her 4 pairs of humans and Nyari, each with matching star-shaped birthmarks on their wrists. "More descendants?" Darian explained, hope rising in his voice. Professor Lin found them. The amphitheater erupted in chaos as Krex ordered his guards to remove the intruders. But the human commander raised her hand, activating a projection that hovered above the assembly. It displayed an ancient recording, the final testament of the original researchers before their execution. As the faces of human and Nyari scientists spoke in unison about their discoveries, about the manufactured war that served power-hungry leaders, about the children they had encoded with the truth, a profound silence fell over the assembly. When the recording ended, Ilara stepped into the center of the chamber and held out her hand to Darian. He took it without hesitation. The connection between them had grown stronger with each passing day. Now, instead of passive memories, they actively projected the shared vision outward, a telepathic broadcast that rippled through the assembled Nyari, showing them the truth stored in their DNA. Images cascaded through the collective consciousness of the assembly. Laboratories where humans and Nyari worked side by side. The molecular structure of the cure derived from both species' genetic material, the conspiracy to maintain the war, and finally, the future that could be. Worlds healed, species united, the Vaxis pathogen eradicated forever. When the vision faded, many in the assembly were weeping. The telepathic hum had transformed from suspicion to awe. Elder Thela, oldest of the hierarchy, rose shakily to her feet. "I remember," she whispered. "I was a child when the purge happened, but I remember the time before when humans walked among us as friends. One by one, others rose. Ancient memories breaking through generations of propaganda." Krex looked around desperately, his authority crumbling. "This changes nothing. The war has defined us for centuries." "Then perhaps it's time we defined ourselves differently," Ilara replied gently. The human commander stepped forward. "Our delegation came prepared for this moment. We have synthesized the cure from the genetic material of these descendants. We offer it freely to the Nyari people, and request that together, we finally heal the wounds of the past." 3 days later, Ilara and Darian stood on the cliffside overlooking the Nyari capital, watching the twin moons rise over the ocean, the very scene from their first shared vision. Behind them, in the great medical centers of the city, the first treatments were being administered to those still suffering from the lingering effects of the Vaxis pathogen. "Do you think it will last?" Darian asked, his fingers intertwined with hers. "Peace after so much hatred?" Ilara's free hand rested on her abdomen where their child, the first officially acknowledged human-Nyari hybrid in 3 centuries, was growing. The ultimate proof of what their ancestors had discovered, not just compatibility but complementary strength. It won't be easy, she admitted. 300 years of war leaves deep scars. But now everyone knows the truth, Darian smiled. Truth is a good beginning. As they stood together under the light of the twin moons, other couples, human and Nyari pairs who had found each other after a lifetime of strange dreams and unexplained connections, gathered around them. Each bore the star-shaped birthmark. Each carried fragments of the same hidden history. Your kind must die, Alara whispered, echoing her words from their first meeting. But you held my hand instead, Darian completed, tightening his grip on hers. The old world of hatred was dying indeed, making way for something new, something their ancestors had glimpsed centuries ago, something worth encoding into the very essence of their being, passed down through generations until the time was right for truth to finally emerge from the shadows of war. And as the moons climbed higher in the night sky, their light illuminated not just 2 former enemies now joined as lovers, but the first gathering of a new people, neither fully human nor fully Nyari, but something altogether unique and beautiful, the living embodiment of peace.